What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York, and on the phone we got Jim Gray from Caligula's Horse. Thank you for your time today, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Alex. This is fun.
Yeah, this is great. Doing these interviews is the only socializing I've been doing in the past, 2.5 months, so...
No, I feel you. This is great. I get to talk to a person. How exciting.
Yup. Via Skype, that's the future way of socializing, I guess.
No, it's very sad that that's the case. But yes, it is.
Yeah, but it's really good to have you here at the moment because you're releasing Rise Radiant fairly soon, and what I'm curious is this directed to be, is this intended to just be, a continuation of what we heard on In Contact, or do you think that this is like a new beginning for Caligula's Horse in a way?
Kind of both, I guess. I mean, we always try to kind of step forward with everything that we're doing, learn from what we've done from the previous album and go, what did I love about that? What would I like to sort of emphasize on the next album? Or in what way can we make this exciting for us? So because, our entire process is kind of predicated on us enjoying the music that we make, So yeah, it's a step forward. It has a variety within it, but it definitely has some of our heavier moments. And it's really leaning into the emotional honesty side of the music as well. So yeah, we're all pretty proud of it, man. It's exciting.
Could these singles that you released off of it so far, such as The Tempest and Slow Violence and Valkyrie, serve as a clear representation of what the whole album is going to sound like, or is that just scratching the surface?
Yeah, that's just kind of the surface level, really. I mean, I love those songs, but they definitely are the more singly sounding tunes from the record. There are a couple of longer tunes, Salt, Autumn, and The Ascent. Some of the remaining songs there, they're a little longer, a little more kind of through composed. I think they're reflective of the album's sound in that they are, again, they're really sort of powerful, emotional songs, and also in terms of their message and what they're carrying. It's really reflective of what we want to say with the album, but sonically speaking, musically speaking, there is a lot of variety in Rise Radiant.
Yeah, well, I've always thought that Caligula's Horse music is very experimental. I dived into the rest of your catalog because I discovered you on In Contact, and then, dove back deeper into the catalog. But, I feel like every album really almost plays by its own rules. I feel like Moments is different from, The Tide, The Thief, and The River's End, and which is different from Bloom. So, it's always fair to say that, experimentation is almost, essential in the Caligula's Horse writing process, right?
Yeah, I think the last thing that we would want is to become a heritage band of our particular sound. You know what I mean? I'd like it to stay fresh for me, and I think Sam and I are kind of united in that we want our writing process to be as exciting for us as it was when we first started working together. It's like spicing up things in the bedroom late in a marriage. It's like we're trying out new things. We're trying to keep things moving along. So yeah, I definitely want to keep it fresh. Yeah, long story short.
I always got to say that progressive metal bands always have the best analogies. That was great. It's,
lowering the tone is half of what I do, which is a shame.
Yeah. Well, is it almost fair to say that every album is almost kind of like a self-portrait or a representation of who you and the band are at that particular time? Do you consider these albums to almost kind of be like self-portraits?
Yeah, totally. I think particularly from Bloom onwards, I think Bloom, it was a turning point in my life, definitely. I'd just become a parent, and my daughter was born around the same time as I lost a close friend, and there was a change in my personality in that I wanted to put more positive things out in the world. I wanted to have a message that invigorated people, and I didn't want to just write sad music or write sad, sort of unidimensional sad music, that didn't have an element of bittersweetness or positivity in it. So I think that was sort of a change as well, and the experience of writing and recording that record meant that everything going forward was just as honest and just as much as a reflection of where we're at. So apparently we're into some heavy things right now, because there's a fair few sort of the heavier moments on the album. Maybe that's just parenthood speaking. I don't know.
Yeah, you predicted I can't stress enough on how many bands predicted the future. I think a lot of bands are choosing not to push back the release date on their albums, and that's only because they want to show we predicted this first.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest example of that is probably Haken with Virus. You know, I mean, that's an album that was written and completed and ready to roll well and truly before anything, and it's just sort of, it's almost unfortunate, you know, that it came out now and that it was like they've had to have an explanation. It's like, guys, this isn't us, like, you know, pushing an agenda or trying to profit off a crisis. It's like this is what the album was called, you know.
Yeah, it's funny.
Amazing so far.
I interviewed Ross Jennings seriously like about 3 weeks before they imposed the lockdown, and then they announced that. And I noticed like before, like I didn't see it right away that they announced the new album title, but I noticed the view count on that interview just went up, just skyrocketed. So because of that whole thing. So yeah, I blame Haken for this whole thing.
Yeah, that's it. I blame those lovely men for this terrible situation. I think like it's really interesting actually looking at Rise Radiant and kind of looking as well as the covers that we chose as these bonus tracks, that it just became more and more appropriate for the time we were living in, you know, well and truly after it was finished. We had finished the album, or we're definitely late in the recording process when the fires in Australia kicked off. There's like Australia-wide bushfires. It was a huge crisis, and at that point we were thinking like, wow, how is it that we've accidentally written an album that is full of these, you know, positive messages of like overcoming and we can get through this, at a time where people somehow need it, and then things just got worse globally, and it was just looking at that going like, well, you know, this is definitely the album that I need to hear right now, so I hope it's the same for other people.
Mm-hmm. Do you need to hear music in order to come up with the lyrics, or could there ever be a concept or a subject matter, and that could help determine the composition of the actual music?
It's a good question. I think it's kind of both. I think a lot of the way we write is simultaneous, so it's hardly like Sam's going to come to me and go, here's a completed song, throw your vocals down, I don't really care. It's more like we'll feed off each other's ideas. There'll be small things that are, you know, a skeleton version of what would later become a full song, and each of our ideas kind of feeds off that. So more often than not, I'll sing a little vocal shape or pattern over the top of something that Sam has sent me, and that I'll sing it in like a weird Simlish kind of bizarre vowel shapes that don't make sense, and from those vowel shapes often like little things will spark and you go like, oh, I like this, and that'll take you where you need to go. But then there's cases like in Contact where before anything had started I had an idea for a concept that was way too broad and wild for an album, and we sort of found a way to funnel parts of that into these 4 chapters that we ended up landing on for that. So yeah, it can be both, definitely.
Yeah, aren't you ever worried you'll have like the best lyrics ever, and then they always go like one syllable over or under the actual arrangements?
No, you're so right. But it is a challenge, especially with Rise Radiant. I've sort of tried to take what I've learned from digging into spoken word a little while ago, and all these things that I wrote, ideas that I had in my back pocket for spoken word stuff, and then trying to apply those themes and some of those lines into areas where they're appropriate in Rise Radiant. And it's kind of an exciting process, but a very difficult one to kind of try and hone that into something that is originally designed to be just said rhythmically, and then trying to make that flow and scan really nicely in music. But I'm extremely proud of how it came out in Rise Radiant, actually. This is, you know, I don't know if it's an Aussie thing, but like I'm really reticent to kind of say that what I do is good. You know, you don't want to be seen saying that you're happy with what you've done, but I'm extremely proud of it for sure.
Now, kind of going back to like, you know, the mood and the concept of the music, because like, I mean, just on In Contact alone, I felt many different vibes. I thought Love Conquers All is very different from a song like Fill My Heart, which is very different from a song like The Cannon's Mouth. Is it fair to say that maybe each song is representative of an emotion that you were feeling at a particular time?
I think that's very true. I think on In Contact also, you know, the chapter in which that was being written for is going to be reflected in the music as well. I think, you know, Ink, the third chapter, is quite dark. You know, I had this sort of bleak city image in my head while I was writing it, and I think a lot of that was reflected in the music that Sam and I put together. With Rise Radiant, I think it was sort of a mission early on that we had, that we wanted these songs to have their own voice. You know, each of them to have their own approach, their own message, their own sound, and I think that has sort of led to the album having the variety that it has. I think each song has something to say, and it says it in its own way. So yeah, we do set ourselves sort of writing challenges and writing limits and boundaries at the beginning of every album, and Rise Rating was no different. We wanted to be really direct with our emotion and concise with what we had to say, and let the song say what they needed to say in as concise a time as possible. So yeah.
Do you so being that you want to, do you find it harder maybe though, like the longer you work on something, the harder it is to kind of like maintain that moment or even maintain the context in a way?
It all happens quite quickly. Once you're onto an idea, we kind of knuckle down on that one particular thing. Like, we'll have 3 or 4 things on the go, lots of ideas getting thrown around, and then when one seems to be coming together, that sort of becomes the direct focus. So a lot of that is carried by its own momentum and our excitement about it. But I think, like on a macro scale, like when you're looking at the whole album, definitely. I think that the last couple of songs, the last song that you write is always going to be a little bit uphill. It's going to be a bit of a struggle to kind of maintain it right up until go time. But I think that struggle always makes the last song that we write really exciting for me, because by the end of it, it's just like, yeah, we worked hard for that one. We're proud of that.
When you're bringing the song into the live presence and you're re-executing it live, is it almost kind of like bringing you back to that particular moment? Is it almost kind of like a time machine in a way?
Yeah, kind of. Or even like getting to know the song for the first time, really. I mean, we have this thing, and this started on Beside the Thief and River's End, where we wanted to make sure that the songs stood on their own right. That it wasn't a production element that made them work. It wasn't an arrangement element that made them work. It was more, if you stripped it down to just an acoustic guitar and voice, the songs would work. Like, that's what we challenge ourselves to do. And so these songs exist outside of the way that they're written on the album, or outside of the way that you hear them on the album. So then taking that to a live context and hearing that with not just the size and the energy of a live performance, but also the energy that you feed off from the audience as well, that beautiful sort of cyclical thing. It is getting to know the song really for the first time in its true form.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you try to leave the music open to interpretation, or do you try to maybe engage the listener into because I feel like the music is so engaging in itself that really a lot of listeners like to dive in to just about every aspect of it, especially in this genre. Like, do you try to leave it open to interpretation, or do you want the listener to sort of see things from your point of view in a way?
I think the former, to be honest. I put a lot of thought into lyrics and things like that, and I think lyrically speaking, I don't like to force my meaning down your throat. I don't, especially when it comes to a concept or something like that. I don't want to be telling you, the setting and the character or the name, or like interior, brain, day. I'm not giving you a screenplay of the thing that I'm writing, but like, I do want people to kind of get an emotional response to it, and I don't know what that emotional response is going to be specifically for them, but I feel like it's broad enough for them to kind of put their own meaning on it. When it comes to the actual instrumental music underneath all of that, there is, again, a great deal of thought being put into the way in which those parts reflect the story or the mood or the message of the song, and Sam even puts that into his approach to guitar solos as well, like the way that it carries, like what story is that solo telling, that kind of thing. So yeah, there's a lot there to be interpreted, but we're never going to shove it down your throat. Okay,
fair enough. I think the music is like very easy to grasp onto, to the point where I think a listener would almost want to see what the music is about too.
No, we do get questions from fans to like clarify stuff, and I'm happy to do that for them. But again, my meaning has a lot more detail than is contained within the actual lyrics. This is just sort of the core of where that came from me. So people are interested in hearing that for sure. But I love hearing what people think of it. Like what did it make them feel? What nostalgic time did it remind them of? What did they get from it that they needed? That kind of thing.
Yeah. You ready for the most difficult question of the whole interview?
Absolutely not, but let's go for it.
How do you know when a song is done?
Yeah, good question. I'm stalling now. No, it's for us again. It's like we're not one of those artists that's kind of like, something's going to sit on a shelf until it's absolutely complete and whatever. And I also disagree with the opposite of that, which is like people saying that art is never finished. You just kind of release it. I disagree with that a great deal. But we have that approach, like I mentioned earlier, where the music is for us. We're writing stuff that we enjoy. So if it comes to a point where that song to us has nothing more to say, it has contained as much meaning and much energy and as much emotion as it possibly can, and we look at that and we say, yeah, no, that's a finished work. I'm extremely proud of that kind of thing. So I guess because we're not writing for to impress the label or impress fans or what people expect it to sound like, we're kind of the arbiters of its quality and the arbiters of its completeness. And so when it comes to a point where Sam and I are looking at this thing going like, wow, yeah, there it is, then yeah, it's done.
That's fair enough, and that was probably the most concrete answer I've ever gotten.
Nice. It's the coffee that I'm drinking, because it's like 10 in the morning, this is my first coffee, and it's been a hard one until now. So yeah, nailing it. Love it.
Yeah, as you're drinking coffee, it's 8 o'clock at night here in New York City. We're getting ready to have a Jack and Coke or a cocktail.
Good. You know what? It's because of this isolation stuff, I might just join you in that. I don't really care. There are no rules now.
Let's do it. We'll do a virtual after party. The interview is the concert, and then we'll do a Skype after party.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, you have to bring your own beer. That's the only requirement.
Damn it.
Yeah,
I thought it was your shot. That's fine.
Well, another question, kind of going back to the inspiration, though, because even though I've probably said inspiration way too many times in this interview, but do you almost kind of have to put yourself in a certain environment or a certain atmosphere? Do you prefer to be alone, or do you prefer to be in the company of your other bandmates to really come up with ideas, or do ideas just come out of nowhere when you least expect them?
I love this question. It's sort of all of them again. I hate to give a broad answer like that. It depends on my mood, really, because I'm an ill person. I'm very recently medicated, mentally ill human being. So it's kind of it depends on where I'm at. So I am a quintessential extrovert, and I mean that only in the way that I need people to function properly as a person. So the best writing that I do is when I'm in a room with Sam, because Sam has this incredible ability to make every idea that I have better, because he's a genius. So it's, but the rest of the time, I will lock myself in my office and just hack away at something until I've got it, particularly if I'm having trouble with it. There are a lot of times lyrically where I'll be sitting there and I don't have that instant spark, this is a great idea, and I just have to kind of pen as much of it as I can, as well as I can, and then come back to it tomorrow. I have this habit of I'll be writing on my laptop, typing into a text document, and I will know if a line is filler. I'll be looking at it going I hate everything about that, but it needs to be there right now. So I'll just put square brackets around it, and that way it's marked. So, the next day when I come back to it, I can either look at it with fresh eyes or just treat it as filler. So yeah, there's a lot of different approaches that I take, but for the most part, I know that the best stuff I come up with is when I'm working with Sam.
Mm-hmm. That's a really beautiful thing to hear. And I'd imagine, has there ever been a time where you feel the creative energy, you want to create something, you have the energy and you have the vibe, you're in the creative mode, but nothing ever comes out? I don't know, actually. I think it's hard to answer because I've been writing original music since I was 16, so that's a good, how old am I now? That's another 16, 17 years, so I've got a lot of practice of writing terrible stuff through to writing what I'm writing now, and I think that kind of practiced writing process means that, if I am feeling that, or if I'm not feeling that, I'm still putting pen to paper, figuratively speaking. I think one of the most important things you can do as a creative is to try and create every day or as often as possible, even if what you're coming up with is trash, and then not delete it, not get rid of it, because you never know when the next cool idea is going to come from. Even if this, say, 2 bars of a riff, or 1 bar of a riff, or one particular line from something terrible that you've written can spark something down the track. So, yeah. I don't know if that answers the question or if I'm just waffling, but here we are. No, you answered it perfectly. And aren't you always worried too that stuff you might leave out will be a B-side one day and just be the biggest hit you guys ever had?
Yeah, well, that would would be hilarious, wouldn't it? I would absolutely love it if something that I, didn't like very much happened to be the thing that other people love. Maybe that's what I've been doing wrong all this time. Maybe I should be writing music that I personally despise, and that would have had some more success. Maybe that's the next album. Thanks, Alex. This is going to be great. Yeah,
you're going to write a horrible album, everybody's going to crap on it, and then they're going to come back, and I can see the dislikes on this video totally outweighing the likes now at this point.
It'll be a party. I look forward to that.
Yeah, but you still have to bring your own beer to that one, too.
Damn it. Stingy Americans, man, God.
Yeah, I mean, Bud Light ain't cheap nowadays. That's quality beer right there.
I'm not going to lie to you, I actually do drink Budweiser at home sometimes because they are sponsors of Major League Baseball. That's the only reason. I absolutely love baseball, and so and also fuck the Yankees. I'm sorry, I do drink Bud, and I'm sorry about that.
Oh God. Whew. We're trying to promote the rescheduled Gramercy Theatre show, man. Like,
I was planning on saying it on stage anyway. I don't care. It's fun. Yeah. Your hatred feeds me. I love it.
Try to remember we're the hardcore capital of the world, so.
Oh yeah, we'll be in trouble there. That's all right. I'll just go into hiding.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that was awesome. I gotta say that was great. And back to the Budweiser thing, I got in trouble for drinking Budweiser at a young age by my parents, not because I was drinking, but because it was Budweiser. My mom being Bavarian, that's an absolute insult. So.
Oh, that is good parenting right there. That is fantastic. It's just like, if you're gonna do this, do it right.
I have two more questions for you, but when it comes to playing your material live, like, is there maybe a similar energy into your live presence as you do when you're creating music, or is playing live versus writing music almost a separate art altogether? Because, this was going to be our first time for a lot of us seeing Caligula's Horse, so.
I think, yeah. I mean, I have a great deal of energy and excitement in the studio when things are happening, but it's a really deliberate and focused process when we're putting that together, and even when we're in the studio and delivering things, recording line by line, or really trying to get the best performance. It's a sort of a diligence that we have for that. But in the live context, the energy, the same excitement is there, but in a very different form, where I want to communicate as much as possible. More often than not, I'll have my eyes closed through a lot of the singing parts just to kind of really try and connect with where I'm at for that and give the best best emotional performance that I can.
Yeah, it almost seems like, and this could just, again, be me being, a listener of you guys, but like, when I first heard In Contact, it really took me into an alternate reality. I feel like it distorted the atmosphere around me, and do you almost kind of, and again, that's my interpretation, but like, it almost feels like when you're playing live, do you almost kind of in a way like portray a character, or is music kind of like an escape from yourself as well?
I feel like it's almost the opposite. Like, when I'm not doing this thing, for example, right now in isolation, and not being able to tour and not really being able to get together and write, that kind of thing, I feel useless when I'm not doing this. I feel like I'm not myself. And so when I'm on stage, I feel more myself than at any other point in my life. When I was much younger, playing in Arcane and previous bands and stuff like that, I used to really have a very kind of acerbic, almost aggressive, dismissive stage character that I would put on for my own comfort. It's like if you've ever put on a mask and you go out into the world, like on Halloween or something, you find yourself behaving differently because you have the freedom of that mask, and I think I had that with those previous bands. But with Caligula's Horse, it's just sort of developed into like, that's the real me up there. That's the real me doing the thing that I love as well as I possibly can. So yeah, it's definitely the opposite, yeah.
Yeah, well, because I've always noticed that artists sometimes use music either as an escape from themselves or as a direct extension of themselves, and I almost find it like, I'm not a front man, so shut me up at any point while I'm talking, but like it almost seems like it has to be one or the other. Is it you know what I mean?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, if you're writing something in the studio or in the writing room, and it is a direct reflection of an emotion or a story that you want to tell, but then you get up on stage and the way that you deliver that is is through the lens of a character, then I suppose it can be both in that way. But because I don't shy away from self-deprecation or gags or jokes and silliness between songs, I feel like I have the freedom on stage to be original and be myself, and I don't have to meet someone's expectations of what a frontman does, for example. I'm not going to be getting up there and going like, "Are you having a good time tonight?" All of that stuff, because that's not me. I mean, that's
but you'll say "fuck the Yankees"?
I will, mostly because, again, like, awkward silence feeds me. I love it. Hecklers feed me. It's one of my favorite things, having a chat with people in the audience. So, maybe I will stir shit. Who knows? We'll see.
As long as you say the Mets as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to offend the entirety of New York. I want to have at least some people on my side.
Yeah.
Maybe the National League fans will be behind me there. I don't know.
That'll make for an interesting wall of death, I gotta say.
Yeah, I've never seen a wall of death come towards the stage before.
Well, ideas are coming now. Ideas are coming. Because I feel like you tackle your music from multiple angles. I feel like you could be very direct, but also be very indirect. I feel like you could be both very metaphorical and very literal. I feel like you could be both very, mysterious, but also very in your face. It almost seems like you have a lot of contrast. That almost seems to be a formula in Caligula's Horse.
Musically speaking, too, I guess, where, something, if it's a more aggressive message or a more, like Rust, for example, is a very, from Bloom, is a very aggressive song, and it was out of something that I was very frustrated with. I think Slow Violence is probably in the same category as well, the witnessing sort of a global hypocrisy and me responding to that personally. But a lot of that song is nested in what you probably describe as religious mythology and references to religious mythology. So all of that is kind of metaphorical, because, again, I don't want to tell you directly the thing that frustrates me, but you can definitely tell that it's a song based on my frustration. So it's kind of both, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like you're the type of band where if a listener wants to get to know you, they could just get to know you through your art. No,
agreed. I think so. And I used to teach singing some years ago. I don't do it anymore. But when I did, I think one of the key things that I was teaching my students was emotional honesty is key as a vocalist, especially. I mean, no matter what instrument you're playing, no matter what you're doing, you need to have something to spark the song, some reason behind it. But if you're a vocalist, we use our voices to communicate, and you can always tell when someone's faking, right? You can always tell when someone sings the American National Anthem and it's just like nothing but melisma. Excuse me, good burp, enjoy that. Mm-hmm. Like it's nothing but melisma, it's all this crazy runs and stuff, and you can tell that person is not feeling national pride at that moment. That person is like going through the motions of the thing that they do. Whereas, you could listen to someone sing something very personal, quietly with their eyes closed, and it can connect with you in a real way because they are communicating something honest. So I think, again, musically and vocally, that's like a mission statement for us.
Yeah. Can you really, though, teach feeling? Because, I went to art school, and every artist has, like, a different attachment to their art. Some artists, they live for the creative moment, and then they just throw their art in the corner and never look at it again, but they feel that form of connection to the creative process. Some people don't feel connected to it until the artwork is finished. So, like, can you really teach feeling, or is that just something that, or is that just subjective, in a way, for lack of better words?
Yeah, I feel like it can be taught. I think that it takes practice. Because my lyrical language when I was 17, for example, I had no world experience. I had nothing. I was just a middle-class white boy in Australia. And it's like I had nothing really to say, so I was coming up with this stuff that I thought was kind of deep or interesting. But then, having sort of toured the world, seen a lot of these places and had all these experiences, I feel now that worldliness and all of that experience, my parenthood, all of these changes can lead to being able to express yourself in a broader sense. So it's not just being able to express your emotion, but also having something to draw from, an experience or whatever else. Your language, your vocabulary is increased. And I don't mean that in kind of a verbose way. I just mean like your vocabulary, things that you have to say and manners in which you can say them. But yeah, I mean, everyone has emotions and feelings. Everyone is out there experiencing things in their own way, and I think if you can teach someone that they don't have to be afraid of being honest in their music or in their whatever art form they want to express, then they can let that out. And whether that's just to expel it and then let it go, or to keep and to celebrate, then that's up to them.
Of course. And the final question I wanted to ask you is coming from your region of Australia. Actually, just 2 days ago, I interviewed the deathcore band Aversion's Crown from Australia. I don't know if you...
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, no, I'm familiar with it, yeah.
But I don't know if you've been hearing this, but a lot of people have been calling Australia now like the Sweden of the Pacific, because, I mean, with you guys and Neil Blivascaris, you know, really leading the progressive scene, but, you know, bands like Parkway Drive and Thy Art Is Murder and King Parrot and so many amazing bands coming from Australia. Is there kind of like a scene in Australia? You're from Brisbane, right?
Yeah, that's us, yeah.
Yeah, so...
it's interesting. The scene is very real. It's very real and very present. And over the years that we've been making music here, we've seen sort of peaks and troughs within that scene. And it is those names that you mentioned, you know, our mate Nabla Viscaris. Like, I've known those guys for 10 or 11 years. I introduced Tim to his now wife. You know, it's like we're good mates with these guys, but it's those that have stuck around, and those of us that have developed our sound and developed fan base and just kept trucking with it, that have sort of reached that global audience. And I think through that, bands like Carnival earlier than us, Nabla Viscaris, 12 Foot Ninja, all of these guys that are out there in the world kind of pave the way for us to be able to reach people as well, because now all of a sudden you've got people in the United States or in Europe or wherever that are going, hey, what's going on in Australia? You know, this whole Sweden of the Pacific, which, by the way, that's the first time I've heard that, and it's goddamn hilarious. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like there's people going like, all right, what's next out of Australian artists? And they'll go seek it out, because we have some really cool artists here in a scene that is relatively small. So we're all kind of feeding off each other. We know each other. It's I remember earlier in our career touring with bands like Voyager from Perth. Oh, they're amazing. Yeah, they're great. And again, lovely, lovely people. Like, I miss them because they're so far away. Because Perth is insanely distant from Brisbane. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the geography of Australia. But
isn't that on the other side?
It's the world's most isolated city. It's crazy. All of these guys that we toured with, we learned so much early on. You know, we would go into these tours thinking, yeah, we're tight, yeah, we've got good material, we're ready to go. And then you'd play with a band like 12 Foot Ninja and go like, oh, there's the bar. Oh, cool, okay, now we have to meet that. And then Nabla Viscaris, and then, of course, playing on the same festival as a band like Leprous or something, then you see that, and you go like, okay, there's the bar. And I think that's been a huge part of us growing as performers, is just playing with people that have been better at a certain time and go like, okay, cool, now let's learn from that. And I think Australia's been great for that. Yeah,
and you've toured with like a variety, or played with a variety of different bands too, like playing with a band like Opeth or Mastodon, but then you also play with a band like Dillinger Escape Plan or Protest the Hero. So I feel like your music has, like, being that everybody has, with the periodic table of subgenres nowadays, like, I think, everybody's probably going to categorize you in prog, but, like, I feel like your material could appeal to almost any audience at this point.
Well, I'm glad you think so. I also would hope that. But I mean, we when we played with Dillinger, this is like 5-6 years ago now. We were less experienced. We hadn't really toured out of Australia, and I was pretty nervous getting on that stage, if I'm going to be honest, because I don't know what to expect from a Dillinger audience, but they were really lovely, welcoming, open arms. Same with whenever we've toured with Opeth and stuff. There's just so much openness and supportiveness out there from people who listen to music that's a little bit from left field or a little bit strange. So I have loved every touring experience we've had with bigger bands or bands that I idolize and stuff like that, because there's something you can learn from watching them play every night, but also something you can learn from just realizing that people are out to enjoy music. There's nothing to be afraid of.
Definitely. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate this. Is there just anything else with Caligula Source you would like to promote? Like, I know that things are probably tough right now with the tour getting canceled. Just where could fans find your merch? And the tour is rescheduled, right, for 2021?
Yeah, right now things are being rebooked for Jan-Feb 2021. I mean, all of that is predicated on whether things are better by then. Like if borders are open, if the virus isn't as much of a risk, then that'll go ahead. But yeah, it's kind of an uncertain time, so I can't really make any promises like that,
Okay.
unfortunately. But all I can say is that I am gutted that we're not going to be there with you guys for the release of the album, because that would have been a beautiful thing. But we'll get there. We'll definitely be there with you at some stage.
It'll be definitely worth the wait. And where could fans check out your merch? Is it just on the Inside Out Music merch store?
There are a number. There is a US-based, I think it's merch booth. It's interesting because I'm not the guy that runs this, so like I'm talking out of my ass right now. But there are links all across of our pin posts on our social media stuff. Like if you check out our Facebook page or our Instagram, there are links to all of our merch stores there, and we'll definitely be pushing all of the pre-orders and stuff for the next couple of weeks before the album. So people will definitely see from us where they can go locally to buy our album ahead of time. And I'd love it if you could. It would be the best thing you could do for us right now, is if you could pre-order the album. That would make a huge difference for us.
Yeah, you might want to send some love to the Yankees just to help promote it a little bit more.
I'm not sure I can do that. I don't know I can do that, Alex. I'm a Red Sox fan. I know that's like basic as for like someone from outside of America. It's just like, hey man, what team are you into? Red Sox? Oh yeah, no shit. But I do. I love it. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I can do that.
What would you do if a Yankees player, though, gets up to bat to one of your songs?
I would love it. I would be a fan for life. I'm that easily swayed. No, I mean, okay, so here's the thing. If the Yankees came to Australia and played, and I got a chance to see some Major League Baseball, like a team that I comically dislike purely from rivalry point of view, I would cheer, I would love it, I would get autographs, I would have the best time. It is a rivalry joke that has gone far too far.
Yeah. Let's just make a progressive metal Major League Baseball game. So get you guys, Neil Bliviscaris, Voyager. Let's make that happen in Australia and bring all the Major League Baseball teams here. That would be either amazing or really strange, or both.
I think it would be a little bit bizarre, and I think you'd be probably a little bit disappointed in our athletic ability. If I'm being truly honest, I don't think that goes well.
Well, both baseball games and progressive metal seem to go on for a very long time, so I think in the end they go hand in hand.
Okay, I love that. I love that. Thank you for that.
Yeah. On that note, thank you so much, Jim. Everybody, Jim of Caligula's Horse. Be sure to pick up the new album, Rise Radiant, and be sure to catch them on their North American tour next year in 2021. We'll see you next time on Heavy New York.